Hi, Dave here, G3LRC, previously G0ES and prior to that G6SNV. A musical theme to this because we've got a face-off on YouTube. Well, sort of. Killed in the lily slightly here, but keep watching because what we're going to be talking about is the contentious subject of end-fed half-wave antennas or even end-fed antennas. End-fed random wires, anything with end-fed at the start, because we have two leviathans of amateur radio and also musicianship. We have Mark, the Florida ham man, and we have Peter from Walters and Stanton, the radio shop here in the United Kingdom. And we have some contentious view. We've got Mark, who's got his myth busting on end-feds, doesn't seem to like them, and we've got Peter, who thinks they are at the moment the greatest thing since sliced bread. Then again, nearly everything that Peter has on his channel he's enthusiastic about and is the best thing since sliced bread, because of course he's a brilliant salesman, and without enthusiasm you can't sell, because of course enthusiasm's contagious. Mark on the other hand is more critical. So what we've got two people, leviathans, lots of viewers, lots of views, lots of followers on YouTube. Mark is using evidence from the RF engineer, Yuri, who is arguably the Eddie Merckx of amateur radio, because he's from Belgium. And also, you've got Peter, years and years in the industry of producing stuff for radio amateurs, and also very skilled radio ham. So, who's right? So, Peter's saying his end-fed random wire is amazing, and Mark's saying, oh, there's better results out there. And what I'd like to do is to drop something in the middle, which is the word context. Well, I've got this in front of me. Oops, I don't know, because it just looks good. I'm not using it for this. I'm using this dead cat here, another subject on these flipping things, but a factory reset sorted it out. Anyway, I digress. I go off Tangent Boulevard. Let's get back on the road to discovery with end-feds. If you are a nimble ham and you nip out doing POTA and SOTA and BOTA and all those OTAs, you arguably need a antenna you can get up quickly, you can get down quickly, easy to use, easy to tune, covers multiple bands, and the requisite number of contacts in the time that you have available. So for example, I'll go out on POTA, which we'll do tomorrow, maybe a video that follows on that. So here we go. And what you'll do is you'll go out, I'll need to get a, let's say, I'll take a random wire with me and fed, and I'll go there and I'll go, right, what I'll do, I know this place has got trees, I'll chuck it up a tree. I might even be sloping, you know, so it might be 10 meters up at one end and 2 meters up at the other end, not perfect. And I'm gonna put the coax on, and I'm gonna put a choke at my tuner end, and I'm gonna put a counterpoise on, and then off we go. And probably I will easily do my 10, maybe in half an hour, maybe in an hour. Depends how much power I'm putting out, depends how much the band conditions are. But I know that wire will serve me well. So why would I want anything else? For example, now I know there's lots of opportunities to use different things, but if it works, it works. You could tune up some barbed wire fencing and it'll probably work, and you'll probably do your 10 contacts and get your POTA to log submitted. Well, because in amateur radio, we can get a bit of analysis paralysis when you think about it, because what we can do is we can go, but this antenna is better than that antenna, and this antenna is better than that antenna. And admittedly, for example, if I get you this off the shelf, is a Wonder Wand, this telescopic antenna. This here has got lots of coils in it, it's probably got capacitors in it, and you can tune it so you can make your radio think that it's resonant, and it probably isn't. But do you know what? With the right band conditions, and let's say on CW or maybe data, I will get my 10 in the log. Won't be quick, but I'll get my 10 in the log, and it's easy to carry. So in the context of what you need, that would work. Now I'm just talking antennas now, not long wires. Now, for example, Callum at DX Commander, or a DX Commander Explorer, Expedition even, fantastic, but those are tuned elements. So they're tuned, there's no coils in line. What I've got, well, maybe a choke, but there's no coils in line. Do you get me? The losses are minimal. So for every watt I send up that coax, that antenna, most of that watt gets transmitted. Whereas the more coils are put in line, the less of that watt gets transmitted. And those are the compromises we make. So for example, if you've got an unum or a balun in line, the more coils are involved, for example, a 9-to-1 is better than a 49-to-1, let's just say for bad argument's sake, that because you've got more winding, you'll probably get maybe more heat, you'll get more losses, all that sort of stuff. And as a result, most of that watt or 100 watts or whatever doesn't get transmitted out. So for example, a base loaded vertical may look great, may be handy to carry. You might even put one in your garden, but you might have 60% losses, for example. But if it works in the context of what you need it for, it works. So getting back to this, end-fed antennas, as in long wires, aren't very good. Well, it depends. Might not be as good as something else, but if it works, it works. And a lot of people use them at home perfectly well. For example, out on a POTA, I either chuck mine in tree sloping, like I say, or what I've done as well is I've put my spider beam pole up and I've used it as an inverted L, and it worked fantastically. But what I'm getting to is the science around all this, because remember, in amateur radio, lots of opinion, lots of good people who test. If you look at Yuri RF Engineer website, you will see all the testing he does. It's fantastic. But remember, in amateur radio, it isn't like science as in you do all your lab testing, you produce something, you produce a paper, and it's peer reviewed. The consensus, and a result of that consensus, if they can repeat what you've done under exactly the same conditions, then it enters into the science and might replace something else that was thought to be the best science before. So science, obviously, as you know, is already evolving. And also science is like retesting stuff done in the past, where a lot of, probably 60%, as I understand it, of psychology papers, even the most famous ones, were chucked in the bin as a result of running the tests in a way in which they should have done in the first place. In other words, it wasn't repeatable, P-factor, all that sort of stuff. Won't bore you with that. So therefore, just remember, a lot of the stuff in amateur radio is opinion. There is some really good evidence out there, clearly, but if it works for you, it works for you. Don't get overstressed. If I was selling stuff to you, I'd be all enthusiastic about it. Everything that I would be producing, there's a QRP magnetic loop behind this camera, I would be telling you that that QRP magnetic loop is the best thing since sliced bread, you know, because I want to sell it, because I've got to put food on the table, for example. And these are the thing about biases. Also, recency bias. If the last thing I used worked well, I will tell you that's the best thing since sliced bread, because that's recency bias. Have a Google on Wikipedia, or a wiki on Wikipedia about biases. If I'm selling stuff, there's huge biases. Anyway, you get where I'm going to. So in other words, don't get carried away. Don't get into this N+1. You know, there's no such thing as enough antennas. There's no such thing as enough radios, whatever.
I spent my pension pot on this stuff, and now all that I do is dust it.
Just use what works for you, where you go and operate from. And remember the old advice, if you're operating from home, the RSGB research is fantastic. Get it horizontal and get it as high as possible. I think that's it. I've probably bored you enough. Hopefully that makes sense. I'd like to know your comments below with some evidence. Thanks then. Bye now.